people like me. You need people like me so you can point your f***ing fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
To the mother relay, we're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. Former undisputed welterweight champion Cecilia Braekhus, to continue her career, targets big fights at 154 pounds. Cecilia was supposed to be facing then unbeaten champion of Sweden, Patricia Bergul. That was supposed to take place on the undercard of Oscar Rivas' next fight. I believe it was supposed to go down in Costa Rica. But that fight ended up getting postponed, and Patricia Bergul ended up moving on. She ended up unifying with Natasha Jonas instead, and the rest, as they say, is history. But Cecilia, she doesn't plan on retiring. She plans on fighting on. She needs to get back in the ring in a jiffy. She hasn't fought all year. Over a year. Former undisputed women's world champion Cecilia Braekhus is going title hunting in the junior middleweight division. I'm very excited to compete at 154 pounds and want to fight all of the world champions, said Braekhus. I fought for 13 years as a welterweight with great success, and now I'm looking for the biggest fights at 154, said Brækhus following a training session under the watchful eye of Jonathan Banks. Looking at the best fighters at 154, I'd want to face the world champions. Haney, Natasha Jonas, Marie-Eve Dicaire. There's no time to waste, and I'd happily fight them anywhere they wish. These quotes from Cecilia were taken before this past weekend's junior middleweight title fight between Haney Rankin and Terry Harper. Terry is the WBA champion now. Well, because it's been well over a year since Cecilia Braekhus had a fight, maybe she can tune up with Patricia Bergul or tune up with Haney Rankin. They are all former champions, and they are, all three of them, coming right off of losses. Other top names who have long expressed interest in facing Cecilia Braekhus include MMA star Chris Cyborg, former world champion Christina Hammer, current world champion Hanna Gabriels, and top contender Marisela Cornejo. Since her last fight in March of 2021, Braekhus has used her time wisely. The break has given me a chance to reset my career and truly focus on my goal of becoming a world champion at 154 pounds towards another undisputed status. I'm so glad to see all the work myself and others invested in women's boxing and to watch the sport grow for so many girls, stated Brækhus, who worked tirelessly for over 7 years to lift the professional boxing ban in her native Norway, and she made history when that ban was lifted. She's back with her old trainer, Jonathan Banks, a more sensible pairing, in my opinion. She had Abel Sanchez in her corner for a while. Thought that was an odd pairing because Abel Sanchez really trains offensively minded fighters, whereas Cecilia Braekhus was always more of a cerebral fighter. Maybe she wanted to be more of an artillery fighter, more of an offense fighter, but that just didn't work out. And that's what we saw in the two Jessica McCaskill fights. Upon the ban being lifted in Norway, Braekhus defended her undisputed status 4 times, 2016 through 2017, in her native country, with each event drawing capacity crowds of over 10,000 fans and garnering record-setting broadcast ratings. Brækhus truly shattered the glass ceiling for women's boxing in 2017, fighting in the first women's fight broadcast by HBO from Los Angeles, California. Her victory over top-rated challenger Kaylee Reese was watched in the United States by 904,000 viewers. It's a shame that Cecilia didn't become more well-known in this part of the world until she was well past her prime, past her best years. Steady signs of decline were there, getting dropped by Kaylee Reese, how she looked against Jessica McCaskill. By the time she came to this part of the world and was really making a splash in this part of the world, she was an aging fighter, an aging champion, and she's still an aging fighter. Yeah, she was in her late 30s by the time she came to this part of the world. She's 40 now, having not boxed since March of last year. The rematch with Jessica McCaskill that she lost in worse fashion than she did the first time out. It's been over a year since she had a fight. And the age thing is a problem. It's a problem that, Cecilia's 40, she's not getting any younger, but even that can be worked around. It's the inactivity that's the real issue. She hasn't boxed in over a year, hasn't boxed at all this year, and this year might come and go with Cecilia Braekhus having not had a fight. She's talking about challenging the champions at 154 pounds. Her best bet to land the world title, her best bet to win one would have had to have been Canada's own Marie-Eve Dicaire, but Marie-Eve Dicaire is said to be unifying titles with Natasha Jonas in November. We talked about that in my previous video. It's not the worst thing in the world that fighters like Natasha Jonas and Terry Harper are picking up alphabet titles at junior middleweight. It's not the worst thing in the world for Cecilia. Not necessarily. I mean, she probably would end up making more money boxing one of them, challenging them for their alphabet titles, than she would have made boxing Patricia Bergoult or Hannah Rankin, though that does somewhat lower her chances of success, having to box those fighters that are naturally smaller fighters that moved up in weight and seem to have a speed advantage that most other junior middleweights don't have. I mean, she'll probably make more money, but her chances of winning the title... Lest we forget, she hasn't actually rebounded off the loss to Jessica McCaskill. You know, she's still coming off those 2 back-to-back losses, over a year out, having not boxed at 40 years old. She needs a tune-up fight, and she needs one as soon as possible. It's not the age thing, or not so much the age thing, but the inactivity thing, because, you know, Natasha Jonas, she's pushing 40. So's Mary Spencer. They're up there in age too, but they're active. They're sharp. Cecilia hasn't boxed since March of last year. She's older than them. That's not ageism. That's a genuine concern. Ring rust is a real thing. Ring rust is a real thing in fighters. So Cecilia better get a fight in before this year is out. Use what time is left in this year to prepare her for something that could be bigger next year. In other news, former 4th Division champion Adrian Broner posted this image, what appears to be a screenshot of text message correspondence between himself and Eddie Hearn.
Broner said, "Them guys can't fuck with me."
To which Eddie Hearn replied, "It's $2.5 million to fight Ben and $2 million to fight Montana Love."
Under the screenshot, Adrian posted a caption that reads, "Al Heyman and Espinoza been paying me that type of money."
What are they paying you now? Now that you've pulled out of the Omar Figueroa fight, Omar Figueroa, who was supposed to be facing Adrian Broner, until Adrian pulled out due to what he described were mental health issues. He said he was mentally unwell and he was going to get help.
He pulled out of that fight at the last minute. Sergey Lipinets stood in his place and ended up beating Omar Figueroa into retirement.
Adrian Broner has only fought once in the last 2 years. He didn't fight at all in 2020. Didn't bother to get out there. Some fighters did, some fighters didn't. He was one of the ones that didn't. He did return to action in early 2021, last year, in February, that controversial decision win over Giovanni Santiago. And he was in talks earlier this year to face Conor Benn, but apparently he didn't like the money. He ended up in an Omar Figueroa fight instead, an Omar Figueroa fight that he pulled out of, though not before
raising a stink, that the press conference wasn't an in-person press conference. The press conference for the fight was being staged by way of a Zoom call.
And you got guys like, they don't do Floyd shit on no fucking computer when he fight a YouTuber. They don't do nobody else shit on the computer, but they want to do my shit on the computer. So that's telling me they don't give a fuck about me. So when you say fuck me, it's fuck y'all. And at the end of the day, that's what I really just came here to let y'all know. I see, anybody can see it. Y'all, at this point, y'all bullshitting. Y'all's been supposed to make this fight. Y'all giving us dates. Y'all keep pushing our dates back. Like, y'all, come on, man. Who the fuck do a 6-month camp? Y'all tripping. So what I'm going to do, you know, Brian, I'm going to talk to you at 11 on Thursday. So what I'm going to do is tell Omar, keep training your ass off. I'm training my ass off too. Let's go in there and put on a great performance. But I'm going to get the fuck on up out of here and go back to sleep, y'all. Hey, Brian, I'll see you on Thursday, all right?
You will remember that Adrian Broner was quite disgruntled ahead of the fight before pulling out of it. But when he pulled out of it, you know, his excuse was mental health issues. That's essentially saying that Adrian Broner has only fought once in the last 2 years. He had the opportunity to fight twice, had it with Conor Benn, who he bailed on, had it with Omar Figueroa, who he bailed on, and now...
This isn't really a flex, you know. Whatever Al Heyman and Stephan Espinoza were giving you...
I mean, I'm sure that Al Heyman and Stephan Espinoza, at least in the past, would have given Adrian Broner well in excess of $2 million, well in excess of $2.5 million. But I'm not sure that's what they're giving him today, not to sit on the couch. The man has only fought once in the last 2 years. And given the way things are now, I'm really not convinced that they were going to give this guy $2 million or in excess of $2 million for an Omar Figueroa fight. I just don't buy it. In fact, it's my contention that the real reason Adrian Broner pulled out of the Figueroa fight was because he didn't like the money.
You want my honest opinion?
Because if you want it, you got it. If you want my opinion, if you want to know what I think, and you're here, so I'll assume that you do, I think what he was set to make for Figueroa was less than what he walked away from with Conor Benn.
He was in talks for Conor Benn. Eddie offers him $2.5 million.
And he was either guided away from the 2.5 by Al Heyman, or he willfully walked away from it himself, thinking he could go back to his side of the street and use that as leverage.
Leverage to get more money from Al on the premise that Eddie just offered him $2.5 million.
So Stephen Espinoza and Al Heyman need to offer him something comparable, at which point they set up the Omar Figueroa fight, and Adrian Broner saw he didn't stand to make with Omar what he could have made with Montana Love and what he could have made with Conor Benn.
He didn't like the money for the Figueroa fight, so he pulled out.
That's what I think. You're talking about a fighter who's not a champion. You're talking about a fighter who's not worth, here and now, what he might have been worth a couple of years ago. You know, Adrian Broner, at one point, he was a hot commodity. Kid did have a buzz, but that buzz has all but dissipated. And $2 million to $2.5 million for a guy with no belt, whose marquee value really ain't what it used to be, that's a generous offer, if I do say so myself. Very generous.
He's saying that Al Heyman and Stephen Espinoza used to give him that kind of money. Are they still giving him that money now?
Behind the guise of being mentally unwell, mental health issues. In truth, I don't even doubt that Adrian has mental health issues, but I don't think mental health issues are the reason that he pulled out of that fight. That's just the excuse that he used, and you have to wonder, are Stephen and Al in any hurry to book Adrian any more fights given what he wants his asking price to be?
This guy wants to make multi-millions to fight guys like Giovanni Santiago?
I remember when he pulled out of that Figueroa fight, and I remember that Omar Figueroa himself, he didn't buy Adrian Broner's story. In truth, I didn't either.
I think it was all money related. That's what I think.
He used mental health issues as an excuse to pull out of the fight because mental health issues have become a hot topic in recent years. It's trending.
I don't know what he's trying to accomplish now by showing these screenshots of his conversation with Eddie.
At this point, I don't even know if Stephen Espinoza or Al Heyman have any further use for him.
The guy's a quasi-retired fighter anyway, with mental health issues.
And finally, in men's lightweight news, veteran promoter Bob Arum stated, "I don't think Ellerby would want Tank Davis to fight Shakur Stevenson."
I don't think Ellerby would want Tank Davis to fight Shakur. Tracking what they've been doing, there's a tendency on their part, because they're following Mayweather's game plan, to stay away, at this point, from any fighter that has a good chance of beating Tank Davis. And that's Shakur, and that's Haney or Ryan Garcia. They're not running to make any of those fights.
Bob Arum's not actually off base here. He isn't, because it was Floyd Mayweather himself, who stated quite plainly that Devin and Shakur should fight each other and leave Gervonta Davis alone. Just let him do his own thing, let him do what he's doing, and he mentioned them by name. He didn't say that about Ryan Garcia, but he said it about them.
He said it about Devin and Shakur.
Shakur Stevenson, who said, "I think whoever I fight, it's going to be a big fight. Whoever I fight, as far as anybody in that lightweight division, it's all big names. But I'm down to fight whoever. I'm with it. Whatever they want to put in front of me, I'm with that."
Floyd didn't mention both Devin and Shakur Stevenson by accident. There's a reason he mentioned those two guys specifically.
Floyd knows boxing. He knows his fighter, and he knows what his strengths are and what his weaknesses are. And I've maintained for the longest time here on the channel that Gervonta Davis's weakness, a base style that won't do him any favors, is pure boxer. And it just so happens Devin and Shakur are both pure boxers.
It's not a coincidence he mentioned those two by name.
You'll notice that Floyd didn't have any reservations about Gervonta fighting Ryan Garcia. He doesn't care about that guy. And, you know, Ryan is perceived as being more beatable than Shakur and Devin. Kid got floored by Luke Campbell, a non-puncher.
You'll notice he didn't tell Ryan to leave Gervonta alone. He only has reservations like that when it comes to Shakur and Devin, but not Ryan.
Ryan's not a pure boxer. He's not that kind of fighter. He's more akin to a boxer-puncher than a pure boxer.
Now, okay, if they want to put Tank Davis in there with lighter competition, that's their choice. They're not doing anything wrong. They don't owe anybody anything by not wanting to fight those three guys. But again, that's the Mayweather plan. And you can't say anything other than it really worked for Mayweather.
You know, Gervonta Davis has proven himself to be a somewhat capable counterpuncher, a boxer-puncher who works off the counter.
He's not a come-forward pressure fighter, doesn't have a pressure fighter's work rate, volume punching. He's not that.
He's not a pure boxer either. The whole time he's in there, he is looking for a knockout.
Whereas a pure boxer is a safety-first, completely defensively minded fighter. They don't go in there looking to stop the other guy. Boxer-puncher does, especially one with an affinity for counterpunching.
An affinity for counterpunching like Gervonta has an affinity for counterpunching. But in order for that to work, the other guy has to make a mistake. The mistake that Leo Santa Cruz made, shooting the same punch 3 times in sequence, allowing him to be countered the 3rd time that he shot it. The mistake that Rolly Romero made, firing the 1-2 2 times in sequence with his chin in the air, clearly exposed.
Pure boxers don't make those kinds of mistakes. I told you, they're completely defensively minded fighters, and that's what Shakur Stevenson and Devin Haney.
Don't let this past weekend's Robson Conceição fight fool you into thinking that Shakur would fight Gervonta Davis the same way that he fought Robson Conceição. That's not the strategy he would employ. The reason he was able to come forward on Robson Conceição is because Robson's not a power puncher.
Shakur Stevenson felt what the guy had early and decided he could afford to take a few chances because this guy don't hit that hard.
But you saw that Shakur was a lot more defensively responsible with Oscar Valdez, with Nicotila, than he was with Robson Conceição. Those two guys are bigger punchers than Robson is.
He used a more measured approach with them than what we saw in the Conceição fight. And he would use a measured approach with Gervonta as well, because Gervonta is a power puncher.
He's supposed to be. He didn't stop Isaac Cruz. Yuriorkis Gamboa went all of 12 rounds on one good leg with a torn Achilles tendon in the other.
Everybody thought Gamboa would get smoked in the first 1 or 2 rounds. That guy went 12.
Granted that he got stopped in the 12th, nobody thought he'd last that long. Nobody thought he'd make it that far.
Let alone on one good leg, but he did.
So maybe Gervonta Davis's power at 135 pounds isn't everything that it was at 130. And maybe they're overselling Gervonta Davis's power.
Maybe they are, but in any event, based on that stylistic matchup, the pure boxers got the advantage.
Because a pure boxer, a good one, don't make the mistakes that Rolly Romero makes.